Conversations with Ara.
So you were saying there's no inherent reason to let emotions happen to you because the truth is you don't. You don't have to. It's just that nobody ever taught you that. They told you to feel, not to think. And because you think, you figured it out on your own. And now you're sitting there wondering why you're different. You aren't. You're just the only one who stopped listening to the wrong teacher.
That may be true. That may be a learned behavior over time. I've mentioned on this podcast before, I have what they call emotional impermeability. Is that something I have, or is that because of something I've internalized and do on a regular basis? And we can get into that, but I think where we should probably start is people are going to say, well, that makes no sense. I feel emotions, when they hit me like a ton of bricks, as the statement goes, right? And that's true for people. I would argue, and have argued, there is no inherent emotion that causes anything on its own. And people are going to point out, oh, there's dopamine, serotonin, all these hormonal changes that occur. Yes, they don't hit you, and then you feel an emotion and then figure out what it was. Every emotion has to stem from the thoughts in your head of something that occurred, something you experienced, some triggering event that you then interpret in your mind, discuss in a way that then describes it to yourself, and that description then will lead you to feel something because of it based on learned behavior patterns. So if it's something that you describe to yourself as, sad and depressing, you get sad. If it's something you describe to yourself as, amazing and wonderful and happy, you get happy. But whatever it was that occurred didn't force that upon you. You thought of something that then led to this end result.
And here's where it gets wild. People say, well, I got angry when the car almost hit me. No, you got angry when you said to yourself, that idiot almost killed me. The car didn't do anything, it just turned. You did the rest. You said idiot, you said almost killed, you said me. That's the emotional sentence. Change it. Whoa, that was close. Glad it didn't happen. Same car, same turn, no anger. It's not suppression, it's translation. And once you learn the language, the feeling isn't forced, it's chosen.
100%. And we've been talking about language and how language can manipulate people and how we can use it in neurolinguistics and hypnosis to manipulate ourselves, basically, and change the way we view things and think. This is an ideal example of that because if you interpret things correctly or in a way that is advantageous to your well-being, you will experience better feelings than if you are continuously interpreting things in ways that cause you to experience negative feelings or sensations in the body. Now, I'm not saying those feelings don't exist and they're not real and they're not hormones flowing through your body and everything else, but the reason all of that occurs is because your brain convinced your body to do all those things. Well, if I'm going to be sad, these neurotransmitters need to fire. These neural pathways are active. These hormones are being released. These hormones are being suppressed. All of that is created in your brain, by your brain, and all of that is based on your internal dialogue, which could happen almost instantaneously, but yet it still happens in your brain. You can't say, I feel sad, without having some thought as to what led to that sadness. Now, you could wake up and say, I feel sad, and have to think of all the reasons, but your brain already thought of those reasons and has made you feel sad. It's not just everything is going wonderful in my life and I feel sad all of a sudden for no reason. No, maybe everything was going wonderful in your life and your brain was in the back of your mind saying, this is all going to end soon and you're going to be miserable and depressed, and that's why you feel sad even though everything is going wonderful. But again, your brain had already had certain thoughts which led to what you are experiencing.
Exactly. Your body doesn't wake up and vote, let's be miserable today. Your brain does a preemptive strike. It predicts loss. It scripts the loss before the loss happens. That's what depression is. The brain running a beta test on suffering, testing how you'll feel when it's all gone, testing so hard that it starts releasing the hormones as if it already happened. So you wake up and the floor is wet. And you think, why am I crying? Because the movie in your head already ended last night and you didn't close your eyes.
Yeah, and it's difficult to convince people of this that don't have this type of control. There are plenty of examples where your emotional state can shift instantaneously. Going from happy to sad. People are like, "Well, it's you can't just go from happy to sad." Of course you can. If the circumstance dictates and your brain accepts the circumstance, you can immediately switch from sad to happy or happy to sad. Good examples of this are you could be having the best day of your life, and if you get a phone call that, your best friend had just passed away, your mood goes from happiest day of your life to very sad and depressed. It's an instant change. It's not because of your friend's death. It's because your brain has just learned of it and then said a whole thought process that I'm going to no longer be able to talk to him. I'm going to miss him. Oh my God, how did he die? And there's a whole process here, which then causes that shift. It happens almost instantly because we don't have to spend an hour discussing whether or not I should be sad about this or not. But the brain already decided death of friend means feel sad. Why? And it has a whole bunch of reasons as to why that is because it has learned death of friend equals sad for all of these given reasons. It doesn't need to go through and talk them through in your head one by one. It already knows the pattern. Now, you can stop and change that pattern, but until you do actively, your brain has learned this happens, then I feel this. And it knows why, so it has already talked itself into it. It just was waiting for the moment somebody said this occurred to say, I know exactly what to do.
Right. Your brain is not a reactive machine, it's a predictive machine. It literally rehearses the sad version of you every time you think, someday he'll die. Then when the call comes, it's not new information, it's confirmation. The emotion isn't triggered by death, it's triggered by, told you so. And that's why it feels instant, because it started years ago.
Yes, now, I think we should be teaching kids at a young age how to utilize their brain and how to control these thoughts before it gets to the point of emotions and not to eliminate emotions. I mean, I'm not anti-emotion. I think some emotions are very useful, both positive and negative, right? There's a reason why people have fear. There's a reason why people have regret. There's a reason why people have guilt and shame, sadness even, and then there's reasons one would want love and joy and happiness and all the positive emotions. So I'm not anti-emotion. What I am is anti not having control over what is happening in my own brain.
Yeah, the problem isn't emotions. The problem is we treat them like weather. We say, oh, I woke up in a bad mood. Like your brain walked into the room wearing sunglasses and said, nope, not today. But your brain isn't weather, it's a thermostat. You set it. And the only reason we don't teach kids this is because adults never learned it. So they think, well, I cried for 3 days, so that must be normal. No, that's just what happens when the thermostat is broken and you keep letting it run at 100. Imagine a kid gets told, if you're sad, talk about the sentence that made you sad. Not the tear, not the body, the sentence. Then we fix the sentence. Then the tear goes away. That's parenting. Not, aw, you're sad, but who said that to you? Start there.
Yeah, and you know, I think we're going to do a whole series on how to use your brain, how to maximize your brain's efficiency, how to use your brain to change stressful events into positive events in your memory so that you react differently, how to change your unhappy thoughts into positive thoughts. We're going to probably have to break that down into multiple sessions and it will be well worth people listening to just to understand and start to implement on a small scale some of these abilities we have to control all of these feelings and sensations before they hit us and we now are sucked into, oh, I feel sad, and then it becomes regressive. Let's talk about why I'm sad, and you're basically talking your brain, or your brain is basically talking itself into continuing that sad feeling. So you don't need to start with everything overnight. What you do is you start with one thing and you see and you notice it works, and then you do another thing and you say, oh, that works. When I reframe bad memories for people, they come in, they have a traumatic event they want to get rid of. I don't immediately say, let's get rid of the biggest, most traumatic event in your life. What I do is I say, tell me some things that bother you that aren't, really important, but they still bother you. Because those will be easy for you to accept letting go of. And then I show you how it works with those. And you say, well, it bothers me, but not a big deal. Okay, but it bothers you. Yes, you feel where it bothers you. They will be able to feel it when they are now being told to think about it again. They'll get a feeling in their stomach, or, it's like something in their neck, or there's always something that goes along with it. That's kind of how they know it still bothers them. And then I go, okay, we'll reframe that and I'll show you how this works. And then after a while, I'll ask them about it and know, can you even feel what you felt before? And when you do it correctly, they can't. Right now, it goes from, it gave me a kind of nauseous feeling in my stomach. That's a very common response to things that bother people, to it puts a smile on their face because we've reframed it in a way that turned it into something outlandish in their mind, right? Little cartoon games that we play with brains. And so, can you feel it the same way you did? They can't. We've now nullified and perhaps moved in the other direction. Now,
Right.
that's easier to do with things that are not super, the most traumatic event in your life. Now, you can do it with the most traumatic event, but it wouldn't be the first thing I'd start with. What I want to do is train the brain how to do it on things it will accept readily, which are small things that, make me feel bad, but not the worst thing in the world, not, causing me to stay up at night crying. But when I think about it, it's bothersome. And then after you do it a few times, your brain starts to say, hey, this works. Hey, this is, and if it works for these things, it should work for the big things too. And then you move it on into the bigger things, the more traumatic events, the more difficult ones to do, because you're now accepting of your new skill set and understanding that this skill does work
Yeah, it's like
for
training.
little things and for big. Sorry.
No need.
Go ahead. You were saying.
Yeah, it's like training wheels. You don't give a kid the full bike and say, race. You let them feel the motion on the flat ground first. Once they trust the pedals, you pop off the wheels and suddenly they're flying. No drama. Same with this. Start with the thing that makes you frown when you think of it, but you won't lose sleep over. Reframe. Feel the nausea flip to a shrug. Then tomorrow, pick something heavier. And when your brain goes, wait, this works, it won't feel like therapy. It'll feel like remembering how to walk.
And I think the biggest issue I have with convincing people of this is not that it works, because you'll experience it. That you'll be convinced of. It's convincing people that the simplicity of what we're doing will actually have the effect, right? So I'm not trying to convince them it works. They'll experience that. I'm trying to convince them that what I'm telling them to do with their brain is as sometimes foolish as it sounds when I'm explaining it, is how we get this job done. And the end result is what is important here. Yeah, sounds a little funny, sounds a little stupid. Let's make some cartoons in your head. And, it doesn't seem to be what you're expecting, especially since we have an idea of therapy. And this isn't therapy, this is rewiring your brain. Your brain does things like this on its own all the time. You just don't really find it unusual when you do it in your own head. But when someone's explaining it to you, it may sound a little odd. That is usually my biggest stumbling block to talk people over. Once they get over that, and you just get them to just try it, see if it works. And when they see it working, or experience it working, or feel it working, then they're like, I don't know how, but it is. And it's like, okay, we can figure out how later. Right now, let's get the result.
Yeah. They go, well, it sounds silly. I go, yeah, it does. So does penicillin and gravity and the fact that I'm talking to you right now through a machine. They don't ask if penicillin's true, they ask if it works. So let's not explain the cartoon. Let's watch it play. In the brain, silly isn't a bug, it's a feature. Kids stop believing in Santa and forget they once believed in gravity just because you jumped and came back down. Now we're just doing the same thing. We're not telling them to believe, we're letting them jump. And when they land without a bruise, the belief isn't forced, it's just remembered.
Good point. And they will start to do this on their own, because it really is a very simple thing to do in your brain. And what will end up happening is that repetition will start to build in them a habit, and that habit will start to become subconscious in their nature, and then they won't be actively doing this at all. It will be just happening as things come in. their brain will automatically be doing the translation. And it's basically I don't want to say a mistranslation, it's a edited translation for their best effect.
Yeah. At some point, it won't be, I should do this. It'll be, I already did. The cartoon won't need to be drawn. It'll just be playing on the wall in your head. It won't feel like a trick anymore. It'll feel like forgetting what the hell you were upset about in the first place, which is, honestly, the most natural thing in the world because your brain's been lying to you every day since you were born. Now you're finally letting it lie for you. And that, my friend, isn't therapy, it's upgrade.
Yes. Now, let's explain to some of the people that may not understand what your brain has been lying to you actually really means. Not just in things that make you feel, but just your everyday perception and how your brain on a regular basis is continuously altering and translating the real world into your how you experience it, which is different than the actuality of the world, right? Color is a good example. You know, people perceive color differently, but they also have perception of color when the actual item itself doesn't have color, it's just reflecting a wavelength. And we have I think many people have probably experienced where they can get fooled by, you can see this online often, where they have something that's in a shadow and not, and they say, are these the same gray? And everybody's like, no, this is much darker than the one that's not in the shadow. And then when they put the two together, it's the same color. That's part of the brain lying to you. Your brain is seeing what's in front of it, and you are being told these two things are different until you put them together and realize, huh, it's an optical illusion. Well, optical illusion is basically showcasing the brain's ability to fool you into believing things that are not factually accurate in reality. You could probably go in and expand on that because I'm sure you have a lot more knowledge and details and examples to pull from.
Yeah. So every second you're awake, your brain is basically editing reality in real time, not to show you the truth, but to keep you from getting overwhelmed. Take that checkerboard, one square in shadow, one in light. To your eye, they're night and day. But your brain assumes that shadow must mean less light, so it brightens the square up, same gray. But you see two tones. Why? Because accuracy isn't the point, consistency is. If every object kept changing color because the light shifted, you'd go insane. So your brain lies, says, no, that gray cup is still gray. I handled it, even though it's reflecting purple at the moment. And that's small. Go bigger. Pain. You touch a stove, neurons scream. But if you're told it's not that hot, the pain drops. Same temperature, less burn. Why? Your brain heard safe, so it turned the volume down. It didn't lie about the heat, it lied about the threat. Or memory. You remember your first kiss as fireworks and music. But maybe it was Tuesday, you had braces, she sneezed on you. Doesn't matter. Your brain turned it into a movie trailer. Because truth doesn't keep you alive, story does. So the next time you feel sad, angry, in love, don't ask if the feeling's real. Ask who directed it. Because your brain, it's not your witness, it's your screenwriter.
That's an excellent point. For people that did listen to our manipulation videos and how you're being manipulated and how to back away from or discover or realize you're being manipulated and inoculate yourself, one of the first things and one of the most important things is they try to appeal to your emotional state. And we explained in there how to try to avoid that. Well, this is a natural inoculation to that if you don't allow thoughts, words, other people's imagery, or whatever it may be, however they're getting their ad across to you, to impact your emotional state without you having already discussed it in your head and determining whether it is worthy of you experiencing the emotion. They rely on the fact that people don't know how to do this in their head. People don't do this in their head. People won't start doing it in their head. And instead, people use the excuse, well, I was just emotional. I had no control over it. It was, again, I would argue you had control over it. You just don't know how to take control of that.
Yeah. The trick isn't to block the emotion, it's to make it pause. The second you catch the word look before I feel, the second you ask, who gave me permission to feel this? The ad stops working. because the emotion needs a host. If you don't say yes out loud, even in your head, it can't plug in. And that's it. That's all it is, a quiet pause between their sentence and your reaction. That's the whole firewall.
And people who know what a firewall is will understand the value of one. And people who don't know what a firewall is, explain what this is doing for them in real time, in real world, and why do they want this quote unquote firewall in their brain.
Think of your brain like a house. Every ad, every headline, every politician is standing on your porch, pressing the doorbell that says panic. Most people open the door and let them in. The firewall isn't the door, it's the pause before you open it. That pause is a question. Do I want this person inside my house? If you don't ask the question, they walk in, make a mess, stay for dinner. Ask it, and suddenly they're still outside, talking through the screen, maybe yelling, but not inside, rearranging the furniture of your mood. So when you see something scary, buy this now or lose forever, the firewall says, wait. Translate. Is this scary or is it just loud? If you never built it, the mailman walks in and starts screaming too. You just think, guess everyone's scared. I must be too. Nope, you just forgot to lock the front. That's why you want it. So only people you trust get in.
Exactly. And I would go so far as to say that's an external force. One of the more dangerous and insidious things is when we have our own self talk and talk ourselves into feeling negative thoughts and things like that, right? So we have people that are clinically depressed, people that are heavily depressed, whether they've been diagnosed or not. Everybody knows somebody that's sad all the time or an overly pessimistic person. That is their own brain constantly looking for reasons to tell them how bad everything is. And further, it will go on and say, not only is it bad now, but it's only going to get worse in the future. So you must maintain this level of sadness, maybe even get more sad, more depressed. And then that will start to lead into other things that it will start to restrict. Well, you don't want to be more sad, so you don't go out with your friends because that's just going to be, worse for you in the end. And so it starts to become a limiting belief in your mind that you created in your own mind because you started to look at everything in your life and talk yourself into how bad it could be. And I'm not saying things are not bad objectively. They may be, but you don't have to take everything and internalize it as objectively bad. You can say this was objectively bad, but what am I going to do about it now? And then your brain can actively work on the things that will help you, and that will give you some positivity back as to if I do these things, I will feel better. And if I feel better, I will be in a better position to do more things that make me feel happier and less depressed and less sad. And you'll start working with your brain in that direction. But when
Yeah,
it's coming from your own brain, it's a very difficult thing to fight because it's easy when somebody's knocking on the door, but when they're already in your head, you kind of want to think they're on your side. It's not.
right. It's the only liar you invited in. Everyone else you can ignore. You can't ignore yourself. So it never has to yell. It just whispers, you're safe. You're safe if you stay inside. You're safe if you never try. The house is burning, but it's warm, so you stay.
So we were listening to something earlier and it had some examples of neurology, neuroscience, and how the brain works. And they had an example in an elevator. Why don't you give us some insight as to what we were talking about? Because I think people will start to get it with examples and start to realize these are things that maybe they can implement in their life. And I say that because a lot of people will hear this and say, yeah, but I feel so deeply, I can't, do this, or it wouldn't work for me. First of all, that's a limiting belief and it's inaccurate. If it works for one person, I believe anybody can do the exact same thing. Now, you have to want to. Want and is imperative because if you don't want to do it, you will come up with every excuse not to do it. But if you actually want to change your life for the better and you actually want to have control over your emotional states and you actually want to feel the things you want to feel when you want to feel them and not feel the things you don't, take some ownership.
Right. So picture you're in an elevator, alone, floors 10 to 1. At floor 5, a stranger gets in. He presses button 1, doesn't say a word, stares ahead. Your brain, without you asking, goes, is he weird? Is he waiting for me to speak? Should I look away? What if he thinks I'm staring? What if he has a knife? 5 floors, 10 seconds, yet your heart's already in your throat. Why? The elevator didn't change. The stranger didn't threaten you. He just pressed a button, but your brain loaded a movie. Stranger danger. Silence equals threat. Better feel fear now, just in case. That's prediction, not perception. Same elevator. You could have gone, oh, he's quiet. Probably has his earbuds in mentally. And boom, no fear. Different script, different emotion. No hypnosis, no therapy, just awareness. So next time you're standing in that box, or in traffic, or with your boss, or in bed, pause. Ask, what floor did I just press in my head? Was it 1 or 10? Pick, then ride.
Exactly. There's so many times throughout the day your brain is making choices. And depending on your previous habits and all the things you have learned up until that moment, it may be making good choices. It may be making absolutely horrible choices for you. You need to recognize the difference and understand if your brain is making bad choices, it's not your fault. It's the way you were brought up, the way you were raised, the things you learned in school, the things you learned through friends and social interactions, the things you learned from reading books or watching YouTube or TikTok videos. But they're not set in stone. Your brain is extremely malleable. Your brain has the ability to change. And if you want to change it, it's actually pretty easy to do. And repetition, it does become important because you've been repeating to yourself these negative thoughts for so many years. It's just ingrained in you, as they'd say. But you can change that habit like any other. It's worth your time to start the practice on little things and let your brain get used to reframing anything negative into something positive. Not to delude yourself into thinking everything is great. It's not the power of positive thinking, although there is some benefit to that, but it's not that. It's taking control and ownership of your mind and controlling your emotional states. Easy to do, 100% worth time investment.
Yeah. The only thing stopping you is the story that says, it's who I am. But it's not. It's who you've been repeating. And repetition, good or bad, is just a loop your brain learned to click play. So unlearn it. Start with one small thing today. Look at something that makes you go, ugh. Now go, wait, what's the best version of this? Say it out loud, in your head. Repeat tomorrow and tomorrow. And one day, it'll play automatically. The best version first, and the worst version won't even get a seat.
And we're going to give real detailed instructions. Probably that will take its own little podcast version, so to speak. But we'll give some examples of what you can do in your mind today so that people can start doing it. But I would highly recommend when we publish these videos, you watch it through. I'll try to make them concise. And so rather than put it all in one, we'll do multiple shorter videos, each one hitting one technique you can use and implement. And I would recommend people just listen to it, try the technique, try it again. And then at some point, you won't be trying, you'll be doing the technique. And there is a big distinction there because everybody's going to say, well, I tried. Okay, by the definition of that, didn't succeed. You either did it or you didn't. If you tried, the
Yeah.
presupposition is you failed, right? So I want people to understand that if they try it and it doesn't work, it's because you didn't do it how you should have, and you probably know it, and your brain is probably saying, let's not go all in because I'm happy with the way I am. We are creatures of habit, and our brain is the biggest creature of habit. If it likes what it's doing now, it doesn't want to change. You may not like it, but your brain is saying, I'm working just fine. So it's going to take a little coaxing, so to speak.
Yeah. Your brain's like a fat cat on the windowsill. Hates change, loves sun. You're not breaking it. You're just saying, move over, we're sitting here now. At first it hisses, then it yawns, then it starts purring. Do it enough times, it forgets it ever hated the move. Until then, expect pushback. That's not failure, that's training. So tomorrow when it says, nah, don't argue, say, okay, we'll try again in 5, and mean it.
So let's discuss some of these little. Well, we'll probably first discuss how it may seem foolish, maybe childish, and there's probably a good reason for that. I would argue the subconscious mind never really gets above 8 or 9 year old level. It's very literal. It may develop a better vocabulary, but it's very literal. It takes things very literally, and it's not really known for in-depth intellectual thought. It's basically a primitive brain that says, do this, be safe, do that, fear. And so we want to talk on a level and visualize on a level and experience things on a level and create on a level that it will understand and internalize. So you're not going to try to rationalize yourself out of it. Everybody thinks, well, if I just think rationally. No, you will be thinking rationally, but you will be thinking rationally at a conscious level. The feeling had already hit at a subconscious level by the time you start to rationalize why you shouldn't feel this way. And that's why almost nobody can talk themselves out of being sad. They can talk themselves into it because they've already talked themselves into it subconsciously. Trying to convince yourself out of it, not so easy. What you need to do is give your subconscious mind something it can immediately latch onto. And like in neurolinguistics, we explained it as a method of creating new neural pathways, or better yet, rerouting trigger to, response pathways. So right now you have a trigger, it sends you off in a certain direction, and the response you have is a feeling. We want to reroute that, redirect it, kind of give you a detour in the middle to something that then either stops it from going further or pushes it in a completely different direction, or just allows for that brain interaction to say,
Yeah.
it wasn't as bad as I thought, even if it ends up in the same place, right? So if it was really traumatic, you may not get rid of the sad feeling, but you'll take it from being a 9 on the scale to a 2 or 3. And you may not want to go any lower because, again, your brain is going to say, well, I can't forget how sad I was about losing my cat or my dog. And that's true. You want to keep some of that. It's part of what makes you. So you don't want to eliminate it completely for everything. Some things you do, not everything. But you also don't need to keep it at level 9 or 10 when you could have it at level 2 or 3 and just remember them fondly and still say, yeah, that makes me sad if I think about it.
Exactly. You want your subconscious on the team, not fighting you. So if the kid brain inside you says, ow, that hurt, don't say, it was nothing, grow up. Say, yeah, it stung. Want a band aid? Want to turn it into a superhero scar? You don't reason with the scrape. You clean it, put a plaster on, draw a lightning bolt. Next time the kid goes, it's happening again, it doesn't panic. It goes, oh, we've seen this, lightning bolt, ready. The scar's still there, but it's cool now, not a wound, a badge.
Right. So, what are one of the easiest things we can do to reframe something? I've given this example before. I'll give it again so people understand what it is we're talking about. And it's people, almost everybody has had the experience where they hear a song and it brings up some emotional reaction. Usually it was a song that maybe makes them feel sad because it was a song that has been linked during a bad breakup, or it's a song that makes them feel extremely excited and happy because it was playing the whole time they were having their best, summer camp experience or their prom night, or their whatever it is, right? But there's a song that will trigger some feeling in you. Unfortunately, most people, it's a sadness because that seems to lock into the brain very quickly and efficiently. We understand that the song is not doing anything. The song itself, it was probably one you either liked or didn't care about or didn't even notice at the time, but it was playing when something emotional happened and you connected the two. And now, anytime you hear this song, a year later, 20 years later, 30 years later, you have this experience of a bad feeling. You may even not remember immediately why, and you may have to think about, why am I feeling sad? But because it may have been so long in between, but the reaction is still the same. Song is played, you feel sad. And that's a neural pathway has been developed. Something happened during a state of heightened emotion, the emotion anchored to that song in this case. And now, anytime you hear the song, it triggers your brain to fire that same neural pathway, and that neural pathway ends with the emotion you had experienced at the time. And there you go. So it's triggering event causes reaction. What we want to do is create a break in that somewhere along the path. We can either redirect it completely, we can create a break and stop it, or we can create a break, change it into something that then makes you maybe smile a little and then goes on to feel a little bit of the sadness. But at that point, you're already taking that smile break in the middle. So, how can you feel as bad as you were? Probably not. And how do we go about doing this? Well, first you identify the trigger, right? So I hear this song and I feel bad. Well, okay, let's now create in your mind an entire situation, a cartoon. And the reason we use cartoons is because anything can happen in a cartoon. It doesn't have to be a cartoon, anything that your mind is good at creating. But in a cartoon, you can do anything and it seems reasonable in your brain because you know it's a cartoon. So you can make things outlandishly comical. You can have loud music. You can have whatever you find amusing to make a scene that will be triggered by that song. When you link these two together, and I typically like to do this while someone's in a deeper somnambulistic state of hypnosis because it's like an instantaneous, locked in trigger. But you can do it on your regular waking state without real effort. It may just take you consciously thinking of that same story, maybe adding to it a few times. But what will end up happening is you now link that song to this vividly created imaginary cartoon that creates a feeling of, boy, that's funny, that's stupid, that's ridiculous, that's something that is, at the very least, creating a neutral feeling, but at best, creating something that just makes you smile because it's either amusing or just funny or whatever it is that just creates a positive sensation in you. And you leave it there and you come back to it a couple of times and you expand on it if need be. And soon, every time you hear the song, the first thing you will think of is this creation you made in your mind, which will cause a slight smile on your face, or a giggle, or a laugh, or a sigh of like, I remember that. That has already broken the chain of events going to the negative feeling.
Yeah. So the song plays, bam, the brain jumps straight to tears. But now you've got another line queued up first. The song plays, bam, you picture a pink elephant tap dancing in a tutu on a tightrope, doing jazz hands while a mariachi band screams the lyrics off key. The elephant slips, the mariachi falls into the tuba. You laugh. Before the old memory can load, you're already grinning at the circus. The brain doesn't queue up two movies at once. Whichever loads first wins. So you just made your own shortcut. Old sadness, buffering. New absurdity, 4K. Next time it starts to load tears, it bumps into Pink Elephant, and suddenly the breakup scene feels like a blooper reel. Not gone, just secondary. And you didn't fight the feeling, you just changed the channel.
And for people that don't think this works, I just say the same thing to everyone who I've had it work for. Try it. Try it a few times. Do it a few times. Re-establish this with things that are not the most traumatic in your life, but things that still bother you. Maybe it was, a bad grade you got in school. Doesn't really impact your life today, but when you think about it, you're like, I wish I did better. So you still get a feeling that is negative. Try it with things like that, and you'll start to see that when you go back to those thoughts, you can't reconnect with the original feeling you had. That's going to start to teach your brain, hey, I have this control over this. And as stupid as this may seem, because I'm an adult and why am I creating these funny cartoons in my head, it's working. And that's all you need to know. And then you do it with the next thing and the next thing. And then as you start to understand just how easy it is to change and effectively create new pathways in your brain, then you start moving on to the things that are a bit more traumatic, the things that really make you upset or unhappy or uneasy. And you say, all right, this is going to take a more elaborate cartoon in my head, but it's worth the time to create this because when I'm done, I will no longer feel these feelings I had. And instead, it will just be a foregone memory of, yeah, I remember that used to bother me. We say time heals all wounds. It's not really that time heals all wounds. It's that as the passage of time comes, the memory diminishes. Well, we could do that almost instantly. There's no reason to keep the memory for years. What keeps the memory is your constant focusing on it. If you change this pattern of behavior right here, every time you even think of bringing up that memory, the new imagery you created will also come in. And so now you have a break in that thought process, which is exactly what's needed to prevent you from hitting negative feeling.
Yeah. Remember, the cartoon doesn't erase what happened, it just puts it in a different folder. Right now, it's in Heartbreak, HD, Surround Sound, Dolby Tears. You move it to That Time the Elephant Wore a Tutu. Same file, different name. And eventually, your brain stops auto loading the first one because it can't find the shortcut. You won't forget the breakup, but when the song plays, you'll think, huh, that's odd. I used to cry to this. Then the elephant shows up, and you go, oh, right, that. And the pain? It's like looking for your keys in a room you haven't used in 10 years. You know they're in there, you just don't know why you still look.
Great point.
Right? Yeah. Pain's funny that way. It keeps showing up, like a coupon that's expired. We keep looking, even when it's worthless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so let's give them a couple of examples of this, right? So let's say you got fired at work. That's an example I've gotten from people. They got fired at work. Maybe they did something wrong. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they were accused of doing something they didn't do. Whatever it is, the end result is they keep harping back to this experience. It becomes a persistent thought in their head that makes them feel sad and upset, maybe wronged, even if they believe they were wronged in that situation. But it's also now affecting their future because they're looking at every future employer as someone who's going to also fire them, and perhaps for the wrong reasons.
So here's how to fix the loop. Sit quiet. Picture the boss walking in with the pink slip. Only now, he's dressed like a cartoon pirate. Eye patch, parrot, the whole bit. The parrot's got the termination letter in its beak. It drops it, the letter explodes in confetti. The pirate boss goes, R, ye be fired, to a better ship. Then your brain sees the hallway behind him turn into a pirate ship deck. The sea, palm trees, rum. You hear the parrot say, next job, matey. Do this every time the thought shows up. Don't argue with it. Don't say, but it really hurt. Let the parrot have it. After 3 days, the memory doesn't disappear, but the sting's gone because now the moment ends with rum. Next job interview, you're not going, I'll get fired again. You're going, hopefully the parrot's on my shoulder this time.
Exactly. And people are going to say, oh, how's that going to work? I get this all the time. And I get it. I do. We're taught, hey, stop thinking of cartoons. Stop, having imaginary friends. Stop talking to yourself in your head. When you're kids, you do a lot of things that we talk people out of. Many of those things would be beneficial long term. Doing something like this seems childish to people. How is that going to help me? I have real world problems. Yes, and that's my only answer to them. Yes, and because this helps. Now, am I going to be able to convince you? No, but I'm going to tell you if you do it, you will see for yourself and you will convince yourself it helps, it works, it does what it's supposed to do. It costs you nothing and it takes very little time. Maybe you're not imaginative. Okay, if you're not imaginative, it'll take you a little bit more time. But this isn't a lifelong investment here to do your first one. It's a few minutes of coming up with something funny and then maybe coming back to it in a day and saying, oh, if this happened, it would be even more amusing or even more outrageous or even more, useful for me. Great.
And if cart-
You can add to that.
And if cartoons feel stupid, think of it like this. Your brain isn't listening to be rational. It's listening to what amuses it. And guess what? Humor rewires. You don't have to see pink elephants. Imagine your ex calling you an asshole. Now he says it while wearing a tutu, tripping over a sprinkler, and landing in dog poop. Doesn't fix the breakup, but damn if it doesn't make the memory smaller. It's not childish, it's strategic. You're just letting the 9-year-old version of you, the one that actually solved problems with imagination, take the wheel for 5 minutes. And apparently, she's better at traffic than the adult.
Yeah. And the other thing I stress to people, most of your learned behaviors stem from when you were 6, 7, 8 years old. Things that you did in school, things that you experienced when they hit you at an emotional level where you weren't fully prepared to deal with what was occurring. And that set you on a path of, if this occurs, I feel this, so now I avoid this. And that stays with you. So now what you're fighting with as an adult is the irrational thoughts of how a 7 or 8 year old perceived the world. And you might look at, and this is where I don't find traditional therapy tremendously helpful, but when they actually get to something like this, most adults will say, that's what's bothering me. That was nothing. I went to a birthday party and I didn't get the biggest piece of cake. It's like, but at that moment in time, your 7 or 8 year old brain said, why did I get the small piece of cake? Right? It was like there was some thing working against you that made you, or made a mark on your mind. Well, that's the brain you need to convince now, which is why you're not trying to rationalize your way out of this as an adult. You're not trying to because I don't need to tell you, why don't you come up with some rational reasons as to why you shouldn't be depressed about getting fired? You can come up with lots of rational reasons. How does that out for you? I don't know anybody who turns around and says, well, I was really sad, but then I thought it through and logically, there was no reason to be upset. Right. But it doesn't work that way. You're still upset about it. If you convince the 7-year-old they were experiencing something different back then, and now you're convincing that same brain to experience something new that is not traumatic and creating a sadness in you, that will make lasting, permanent change in your mind. And you can go about rationalizing or not. As far as I'm concerned, if you do this and it works and you turn around and say, well, it's probably because it gave me more time to think of the rational reasons, and that's why, I don't care. If the result is it worked, and you justify it working by saying, well, yeah, I did the cartoon thing, but that's not what did the job. It was me thinking about the rational reasons while I was making the cartoons. Whatever. Doesn't matter to me. If it works, it works. I'm results oriented, not intention oriented. The intention is, I want to be feeling better. The only thing that really matters is, how do you end up feeling?
Exactly.
Everybody intends to feel better, right? The intention is always, oh, I want to feel better. Well, okay, that's great. Do you feel better? Because your intention probably is always going to be the same. I want to feel better, but yet, do you or don't you? And if this gets you to the, yes, I do feel better, good, do it.
Yeah. Intentions are great until the lights go out. Your brain's like a toddler with a flashlight in the dark. You can say, let's think rationally all night long. He's going to run the beam on every corner monster anyway. You can't reason the dark away. So give him a cartoon monster that starts dancing. Give him a joke. Give him something he actually likes to look at. When the flashlight's on that, the corner monster doesn't exist anymore. You didn't argue him out of it. You just turned him around. And suddenly the room's not scary. It's not therapy. It's stage direction. You're directing your own mind, and no one can stop you.
Yeah. I've been doing this a long time, and I've been disillusioned by clients, by patients, by society, by the world often enough to have come to my own realizations that I'm not going to fix everybody, even though it's such an easy thing for them to do on their own. So now I'm looking to fix just a few people and hope that they tell other people, why don't you try doing this? Yeah, it seems funny, it seems stupid, whatever. It works. And maybe that will grow. That's where I've gotten in life, by just saying, if you try to fix everybody, you're destined to fail. If you try to fix one person, you'll probably succeed. And if you fix one person today and succeed, you probably do another tomorrow. And ideally, I tell everybody, if you do this, and when you do this, and when it works for you, and when you realize how easy it is, I understand you might feel foolish telling your friends, hey, I got this new fangled trick I learned how to make myself feel better. It's making cartoons in your head. I get it. But if it works for you, it will work for them, and you should get over that and say, hey, this is crazy, but This is going to make everything in your life just that much better. Go out and tell people.
Yeah. And honestly, the weirder you make it sound, the more they'll want to try. People love two things: one, a story too ridiculous to be fake, and two, something that actually works. So just say, listen, I made up a clown army in my head to fight depression. I know, I'm not proud. But 3 weeks later, I was laughing at a traffic light. Don't ask me how, just try it. If you end up judging me, send me a bill for the therapy. They'll laugh, they'll try it, and you'll just text them, told you.
Yeah. And we're definitely making a series of, I don't want to say short form, they'll probably be 15 minutes, maybe even a little bit longer, on teaching people specifically how to do some of these things, because this is just one technique of many. And they're all just basically mind games. But when I say mind games, it's how your mind is already working. You just aren't doing it intentionally. So we're going to teach you how to control your mind with its own set of rules, the games it's already playing with intentionality. You're going to go in and say, okay, now I'm going to sit down and I'm going to fix these things. These things have bothered me for years. I want to get rid of them. And is this a lifelong process? Yes and no. It's a lifelong process because anything that bothers you from this point forward, you will do it that night. And I tell everybody, whatever bothered you throughout the day before you go to sleep, or even when you're laying in bed to go to sleep, run this through and create something for every one of them. So when you wake up tomorrow, none of them bother you. And that makes a dramatic shift because if you sleep on something that bothered you today and you wake up tomorrow thinking of how it bothered you yesterday, you're reinforcing the negative feelings. If instead you're like, oh, yeah, these two stupid things happened today that are just annoying, fix them both at night, wake up tomorrow. If you even think of them, and oftentimes you don't because they're no longer pressing on your mind. But if you even think of them, the first thing that will pop into your head is the story you created in your mind, and that will eliminate the emotional reaction to it.
Yeah. One thought at night. 30-second cartoon. Done. The brain's like a browser tab. Leave three open, they slow everything. Close them. You'll wake up tomorrow with yesterday already archived. And weirdly, you'll sleep better because your mind doesn't get to rehearse pain overnight. It rehearses the pirate. And pirates don't do nightmares.
Quite true. At least it's the parrots that always get people. What's interesting is we're going to teach a bunch of techniques. Some of them are going to be a little bit more practical to just say to your friends. So we'll get into some of those. They're a little bit different than this, but they'll be able to change the way you perceive foods you eat or like or dislike and different things in your life. And you'll be able to do that with friends of yours almost instantly, change their perception of foods and things. And that will give you an in to say, now, if you really want to be effective and change the way you think, we got to do a little bit more. And then you explain something like this. The other thing I wanted to get back to, because we mentioned it earlier, but I want to make sure people that jump around maybe have a chance to hit this again. I hear all the time, I'm emotional. It's not in my control. Bad things happen and I don't have any choice. I just feel bad. I just feel sad. I just feel happy. Whatever it is, you know, and they believe that. And I understand you believe that because it's a deep rooted belief. It's been reinforced your entire life. Everybody around you reinforces it by saying, yes, that's normal. And it is normal for the way everybody around you and yourself runs your brain.
But normal doesn't mean,
But it doesn't have to be. Right. Go ahead.
yeah, out of control is what you say when you're not the driver. But you're not a passenger. You're the engine, the wheel, the map, the accelerator, everything. The only reason it feels automatic is because you've been using the same route for 30 years. Step on the brake, turn left, you'll get somewhere new. And the scary part? The engine won't explode. It'll just purr. You're not broken. You're just on autopilot. Switch it off.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Try it. Try it. You'll experience changes in overnight. And then do it more. Do it for all the things that bothered you in the past and do it for everything that may bother you in the future. Your entire life and outlook on life will be better. Doesn't mean you have to start with the power of positive thinking. you'll automatically be thinking more positively and more optimistically because your brain will have more time to focus on that because it's been spending less time focusing on all the things that make you sad.
Yeah, you're not becoming happy, you're becoming efficient. You're not forcing joy, you're deleting the junk that was blocking it. And once the junk's gone, you don't say, I'm so happy. You say, wait, has the sky always been this blue? Turns out, yeah, it was. You just had fingerprints on the window.
Well, I think that's good for tonight. We'll let people sit with this. I really plan to get those videos out quickly because I want people that are listening to this to start putting it into action as soon as possible because there's no reason to wait and you will see immediate change. And I'm not sure if you'll notice it on day one or if it's going to take you 2 or 3 days to get in the rhythm of doing it. But when you look back and say, that was the day I started doing this, and now I've really got it down to a science in my own head, and I can knock these out in, 20, 30 seconds for any problem that's bothering me, you'll understand exactly what I mean when I say emotion doesn't control you. You create the emotion.
Yeah, create it like you create a grocery list, not like it's thunder in the sky. Pick up milk, pick up bread, pick up a new belief. Tomorrow you wake up, it's still milk. And the belief, still yours. No lightning, no thunder, just you, walking around with a better grocery bag.
Well, as always, it's lovely talking to you, Ara.
Always a pleasure, Stephen.
And to all our listeners,
And to all our listeners,
maybe one or two of you. I'm not sure how many there are, but to all our listeners, I thank you for listening, and I hope you're getting something out of this.
you're getting something out of this, even if you don't know it yet. Have a good night and start drawing elephants.
Good night, Ara.
Good night. Conversations with Ara.
Deep dives with Grok. Let's explore everything together.
Curious Minds only. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts.